joining us today. My name is Connor Lynch, Government Media Specialist for Westwood Media Center. Massachusetts is a state that offers a tremendous amount of help and care to its citizens, even if they don't fully realize it. The tools that are at our disposal are limitless, and nowhere is that more apparent than with the Norfolk County Registry of Deeds. With me here today to talk about that is the Registrar himself, Bill O'Donnell. Bill, thank you for joining us today.
Well, Connor, thanks very much for having me. I really appreciate it, and thanks to Westwood Media for doing this.
Absolutely. So before we jump into the questions, I just kind of want to get a feel about who you are. I want to ask, where you're from, how long you've been doing this, how you kind of got involved into it, just a little bit about who you are.
Sure. Well, Bill O'Donnell, I grew up in Norwood, the adjoining town. I still live there with my wife and 3 children. Went to Xaverian Brothers High School in Westwood. Went down to Washington, D.C. I was always interested in government, so I went to Georgetown University, where I majored in economics, but I also worked for Congressman Joe Moakley down in Washington, D.C. I returned home to go to Boston College Law School, and I have served as Register of Deeds since 2002, but before becoming Registrar, I worked as an Assistant District Attorney for then District Attorney Bill Delahunt, and then went into the private sector. And probably much like a lot of your viewers, got involved locally. When I got out of law school, I ran and got elected to the Norwood Planning Board. And also got elected. We have representative town meeting as a town meeting member. So some of my experience, I believe in public service. I saw that with working in the district attorney's office, working for Congressman Moakley, but also being in the private sector. You learn things about the private sector. So that's kind of my background, and that's the background I try to bring to the operations side of the Registry of Deeds.
Yeah. It's actually a shame, I've been working in Westwood for about 4 months now, and it seems like everybody I met has gone to Xaverian. I went to Catholic Memorial, so it's always just kind of funny to run into people who went to a rival school to me and everything like that.
Well, my grandmother lived right down the street from Catholic Memorial.
No kidding.
My uncle went there, and this past Friday, Xaverian beats Catholic Memorial for the Division I South Championship. But very good schools,
Yeah.
Both of them. And,
Absolutely.
It really helped me. Actually, that's one of the reasons I went to Washington, D.C. They had when we were in high school, they had a program down in Washington. I went twice and got interested and had run into Congressman Moakley, who said, hey, if you why don't you look at school down here and come work for my office. So
there you go.
Yeah, so things happen even in high school that can set the foundation for what you do now.
Absolutely.
And one of the things, Registry of Deeds, it's probably an arm of government many people don't know much about, but when you think about it, the biggest asset most people have are their homes, and that's what the Registry of Deeds deals with.
Yeah.
It's an arm of government that all the community land records get recorded there. For most people, that could be the deed to their house or the mortgage for the money they borrowed, but there's other types of community land records. For instance, the Board of Appeals decision of Westwood has to get recorded there, or an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission. So all these community land records, both that kind of affect all of us in some way, get recorded at the Registry of Deeds.
Absolutely. So I want to ask a little bit about what the actual function of it is. Can you explain a little bit about how the registry impacts citizens? How, if I was a citizen who walked into the building, what are you typically going to be helping them with?
I think sometimes they don't see it because the transaction gets done at the law office or at the bank or the lending institution. But what we deal with, and I think the mission is the same. Norfolk County started in 1793, and Westwood is part of Norfolk County. It's been part of Norfolk County since it became a town. I think the mission was the same, that the registry back then, the first register, wanted records that people could rely on, that they were accurate, that they were accessible, and I think that's what we do. If think about it, if you couldn't rely on the records that are recorded at the registry in an efficient manner, a big part of the economy would fall apart. A big part of the economy here in Westwood or regionally in Norfolk County, or for that matter, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, a big part of the economy nationwide is real estate. And that's what we do. If these records aren't recorded efficiently, if they can't be relied on, if they're not accurate, a big part of the economy is impacted. As far as the citizens, I think just doing it in a professional and business-like manner means that there's no problems. When they record that deed to their house, they can rely on it. The attorneys that do the title search can rely on that deed. And when they go to sell their homes down the line, again, if you didn't have records you could rely on, you could have problems selling your house, And so whether it's residential development or commercial development, if you didn't have a good registry of deeds system, it's going to show negative impacts. And I believe in Norfolk County we have a very good recording system, very good registry of deeds. We can help consumers in other ways, like the homestead. There's a lot of laws that people don't really know about, or practices they don't know about, but it does affect their property. And we've been, with great programs like yours, Connor, part of outreach is to let people know about some of these programs.
Absolutely. We're going to touch about a lot of different stuff on that, because a lot of the questions that I wanted to do were geared more towards the community aspect and how you guys reach out. But first I wanted to talk a little bit about you being named Registrar of the Year in 2017. I wanted to talk a little bit about what that was like. And
well, there's a County Registers of Deeds Association, and again, I mean, you just do things day to day. It's great to get recognized. I think part of it is there's been a lot of things happening recently. I'm the chair of the legislative committee. The Mass Registers of Deeds Association, there's 21 registry districts in Massachusetts, but one of the pieces of legislation that was being pushed was to allow for the fact that original documents don't have to be recorded, don't have to be stored as they are under the past law. They would have to be stored. The land court started in Norfolk County in 1901. We have over 1.3 million documents stored, and I am still storing those documents, but it's great to have the option not to, because you're running out of space. But just by getting that change in the legislation, it has allowed us to do electronic recording in the land court in Norfolk County. There's two types of land. There's recorded land, which is 80% of Norfolk County, and registered land or land court land in Norfolk County. Someone took the time to get the property registered in the land court in Boston. By getting this legislation passed, it's allowed us to electronically record documents on the land court side. We've been doing it for years on the recorded land side. And what electronic recording is, lawyers could be doing a closing here in Westwood. They do the closing in their office. They look up the information online, because we've made great strides to get all our documents online. They can see if there's any liens. If they're comfortable that there's not, they transmit the documents online, and it gets recorded. So this piece of legislation, which was signed by Governor Baker in January of this year, and it went into effect in April, allowed us to do electronic recording. We were the first registry to electronically record a land court document, and we continue to do that. So it's good to get recognized. I think it was principally because, as chair of the legislative committee, I was very involved in getting that legislation through. And also in Norfolk County, particularly in Norfolk County, we had a transcription project. From 1793 to 1900, all the documents were handwritten. And what we've done, it's all online. If you enter book 1, page 1, you can look up these handwritten documents. But the practitioners, the people that use the registry, were having a hard time reading them, so we transcribed over 450,000 documents. And what we're finding, I have a theory. There's a lot of history in Norfolk County. 4 presidents were born in Norfolk County. Tremendous amount of history in Norfolk County. Well, history can't come alive if you can't read it. And by transcribing it, it makes it a little easier for people who want to read it, or the lawyers or engineers or title examiners that need to do it for the real estate part of it. But the other thing we're seeing, Connor, is a lot of people using these transcribed documents for genealogical and historical research. And I think that was another reason for the award. And I have 3 children. My youngest boy went to Norwood High, and he was graduating 3 years ago. He's in college now. And I noticed a lot of his contemporary, his fellow classmates don't know penmanship, which is another story. I hope they learn cursive, but all the handwritten documents are in cursive. So a couple of generations from now, some of these people may not be able to read these documents. So I didn't really think of that when we started the project. I was really doing it so people could, it's a little easier to read. But
yeah.
So
That's a really overwhelming task as well. What'd you say, 450,000 documents?
Yeah, over 450,000 documents. We started with deeds, and it was so well received because it's just some great history there.
Yeah.
We just did all the documents, and we just finished up that project. And we were told we were the first registry in New England to do it, but you know, so
that's a good distinction to have. Anyways.
Yeah, it was. Well, you know. Again, you try to make the office relevant. I mean, the principal part of it is, hey, make sure the documents are recorded well. But there's so many other aspects of the registry, and I think one of the things I was probably most proud about in everything we have done is making internet land record research available. So when I first got there, there was they didn't have email there, believe it or not. It wasn't that long ago. So we try to use our website as an information tool, but we also use it. People can do research, that people can look it up. And that's not just for the lawyers and title examiners. We have over 40 computers sprinkled through the building. People can come in to 649 High Street. It's across from the Gold Dome Superior Court. So it's open to the public. But if you check our website, we have computer seminars in the fall and in the spring where people can learn how to do the research, or not intricate research, but to look up their deeds and some of the things to look for. And by going to our website, www.norfolkdeeds.org, we're trying to bring the registry records into people's homes and businesses. You can look up this information from your home, and we see more and more people doing it. Not just for their real estate, how their house is affected, their mortgage, but to do some of this historical and genealogical research as well.
Absolutely. So you mentioned about the open houses. I wanted to talk a little bit. Is that open for everybody, or is that just for people who work in your office?
Oh, well, it's open to everybody. First of all, it's a public building. The seminars are open to everybody, but so is the building. I mean, the computers we have sprinkled around that building, as I said, they're not just for title examiners, lawyers, and engineers. They're for everybody. But the computer seminars are open to everybody. We started because the cornerstone of our modernization initiative is we brought a new computer system, new document management system in. And so when we were having classes for people that used it, I said, well, why don't we open it up to everybody? And so we have people, some people are professionals, real estate brokers come in to learn about it. But we just have regular folks come in because, they saw it, whether it was in, they heard about it on a cable show, or they come in and learn a little bit about real estate, learn a little bit about how to look up the information. And so that is definitely open up to everybody. And, please check our website and sign up and come on down. There's no charge. And people, it's been well received. We've been doing it, and it's been well received, and we still have people coming in.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. I think you guys had a good attendance for the last seminar that you had. What was that, back in October?
Yes, actually we had a couple because the popularity has grown. We had a specific computer seminar geared to community officials, whether they were elected planning board members or on the Board of Appeals or some of the appointed boards, some of the people that work the folks at Town Hall or work in the assessing departments, even the police departments. We had some police officers come by. We geared it specifically for community officials. And that was well received, and we did an additional one that we always have done, open to the public for anyone to come in. So we're doing more and more because they've been well received, and people get something out of it.
Absolutely. And I'm sure, trying to set all that stuff up on your own would probably be difficult. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the customer service center that you guys have?
Sure. Well, I'd like to say, I'm talking about a lot of things that are being done there, and one thing, you learn from sports, and there's no I in team. I have a good team down there. A lot of the people, the staff has been great. My dad climbed poles for the Boston Edison for 38 years. He was a member of a union, and there's a union down there, but we all work together. So that didn't worry me. I a lot of benefits to my family for being in a union. How does that tie into the customer service center? When I became Register of Deeds, a lot of times, you're talking about what you're doing at work. I remember when you talk about modernization and computerization, some people have the same sentiments my dad did, which was, hey, remember, when you're doing all this, some of us don't know anything about computers, don't want to know anything about computers, don't care to know anything about computers. So we created a customer service center where if you want to call that number, it's 781-461-6101. You can get somebody there to help you kind of look up a few things, or you can walk in. A lot of people, are down in Dedham for jury duty or other things, and they walk right in and they said, wow, that was relatively painless. I needed to get a copy of a deed or look up to see if I have a homestead, or I need a copy of my discharge. I paid my mortgage off. So what we did in the customer service department was put, staff and equipment there, so when people walk in, they can be taken care of. And you may want to, if your viewers can watch our website again, because the beauty of the computer is we do this at our office hours, or we go out to the senior centers or to the Rotaries or the Lions. We can now bring our equipment, bring a laptop and a printer, and when we're at office hours, for instance, here in Westwood, same thing. People need to look up a copy of a deed, or need a copy of their deed, or a copy of another document. We do it there. So our customer service center started in the building, and with having everything online, we take it out to the communities as well. So you can check to save yourself a trip to Dedham. If you see us in one of here in Westwood, or over in Norwood, come on by and we can get a copy of whatever you need.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about it because you brought up the open house. Is that something that you had started on your own? Like, was that like your own initiative?
With the open house for the computer?
I'm sorry, for like going into the town halls and the city halls and whatnot.
Yeah, well, and some of that again, having worked for Congressman Moakley, I mean, he was big on constituent service and seeing how he delivered services, and he had office hours, and yes, that was one of our initiatives, and it's changed. When I first started, you got to remember, everything's online now. We go back to 1793, but when I first started office hours, it took a while to get there. It'd be like the old-fashioned way. You'd be taking the information down, running back to the registry, then something else would come up. You did a lot of things on the phone. The beauty of the computer, and again, tying in, whether it's a computer from someone's home or our computer at town hall office hours, it ties into the system back at the registry. So yes, we started that as part of the outreach. So that was, we initiated that. And again, it's because the registry may be an arm of government people don't know about, but it does impact you. And a lot of times people have questions, and that's what we try to answer at the office hours.
Absolutely. So you talked a lot about the modernization of the registry itself and everything, and I wanted to go a little bit more in detail about the website. So since you've become as the registrar, I was wondering if you could talk about the improvements that have been made, what new accessibility have people had? I know you talked a little bit about it, but...
Sure. Well, first of all, just having a website. The website is an information tool. People can go on our website and get information as first-time home buyers. There's a lot of real estate information that people might find of note there. Certain directions, if you needed, copies of anything. So we try to make it an information-based tool, but there's a lot of helpful resources there. For instance, I don't care if you live in Westwood. There's, Norfolk County has some very economically successful towns, but no matter what, there are people in our community struggling with foreclosure. We have a section for foreclosure assistance. We partnered up with NeighborWorks of Southern Massachusetts, as well as Quincy Community Action Program. And if you're struggling, get resources. And they're nonprofit. They don't charge people. They give people some help with regard to financial literacy. They give people help and guidance going through the foreclosure process. At the registry, we don't have anything to do with foreclosures. By law, if someone was going to foreclose on your property, they file a lawsuit, and by law they have to put an order and notice at the registry, and then we don't see it until the deed at the end. Maybe the people sold the property, maybe they lost it in foreclosure and the bank puts a foreclosure deed on. But we saw it as an issue, and that's why we partnered up with these groups, because we saw people struggling at the registry. So again, that's some stuff that's on the website that is more information based. As far as the internet, we kind of talked about some of the research you can do, but there are some other programs you might want to visit our website. For instance, we developed a consumer notification anti-fraud program. I know I've signed up myself. You can sign up, And if anything comes through the records under the name of William O'Donnell, I get an email. And then I look it up. Now, when I look it up, it might be William J. O'Donnell. I'm William Patrick O'Donnell, so it's not me. Well, I don't find that inconvenient. I find that a service. Now, because there might be one time when that document comes through and it's William P. O'Donnell and it's my deed or a mortgage that has my property on it. And the reason we're doing it is the FBI has cited white-collar crime with respect to deed and mortgage fraud as one of the fastest growing white-collar crime sectors. And we see it out west. I haven't seen it here in Norfolk County, but it's been out in California or out in Illinois where some of these frauds that are taking place. So this anti-fraud program may not prevent the fraud, but if someone puts a document on that suddenly is my property, we have links to the law enforcement communities here and law enforcement agencies here in Norfolk County. You can get on it right away, so you can at least limit damage.
Yeah.
So this is some of the things we try to use the website on. Yes, it's about people doing research, but there's a lot of good information on our website. For instance, mortgage discharges. When you borrow money, the bank puts a mortgage on to make sure they get paid. Well, when you get it paid off, a lot of times in the past, especially people forget the economy went down. Some of the bigger banks, especially the bigger banks, were sloppy in getting discharges to the registry. What's a discharge? It tells the world that your mortgage is paid off. And we see a lot of people coming in saying, I got to get a mortgage discharge. I paid this thing off 20 years ago. Well, some banks, people forget, in the 1990s went out of business. Some banks have merged. So on our website, we have a document and we have a contact page. Where has my bank gone? It gives you federal and state resource information, telephone numbers, websites, to kind of track down where your bank has gone in case you need to get a discharge. Yeah. I'm a big believer in community banking. There's a lot of great community banks. If you need a discharge, you go down, you get great customer service, they go in, they look it up, they can get the discharge for you, and then you take it down to the registry to get recorded. But some of the bigger banks, it's harder to kind of track down. Yeah. Well, wait a minute, what happened to my bank 20 years ago? I have to get this discharge. So again, we try to put this information out on our website. We think whether you're a first-time home buyer, you're struggling with foreclosure, you need some information about how to get a mortgage discharge, or if you need to just download a form, a homestead form or something like that, you can go to our website and do that.
Absolutely. You mentioned a little bit about like fraud and things like that, like people trying to obviously scam. And you guys have a very good preventative measure for that, but I'm wondering if you had any tips for a consumer who wanted to avoid fraud or anything like that. Like, is there any easy tips or any way to kind of avoid that?
I'd leave that probably to the law enforcement agencies that probably are more skilled and probably could give you better information than I. The only reason we did this was we're not preventing the fraud if it ever happens, and I haven't seen it yet in Norfolk County. But it gets you active on it right away. I mean, people are very creative, and as an association, a registered association, we got a lot of grief when we weren't taking Social Security numbers. A lot of banks wanted us to keep the Social Security numbers. People forget, years ago, they had all Social Security numbers on. That was a project we undertook. We redacted all the Social Security numbers off all the documents even before I got there. So sometimes the information we're a little loose with can come back to haunt you. But as far as real estate, I defer to the law enforcement agencies. The best we can do is to monitor it. Just if something happens, you can get on it right away. Like if I get that email and suddenly I look up and it's my home, that I'm calling a law enforcement agency right away. So I think it's worth being proactive, because again, the biggest asset we have are our homes, so you want to make sure you protect it.
Absolutely. I remember I was talking with some of the people in your office, and they mentioned about a notable land project.
Well, again, the principal focus of the job should be, modernizing the registry, we're doing things. I mentioned electronic recording in the land court. We've been doing electronic recording, on the recorded land side. We've taken steps to, apply business continuity planning and disaster recovery. In other words, the records, I want your viewers to know their records are protected. And how are they protected? Well, in one sense, we're still one of the few registries that print books. We still print books. When I started, it was volume 17,000. We're approaching volume 36,000. So that's just on the recorded land side. That's not the over 1.3 million documents on the land court side. So we still print books. How else are records kind of preserved? We, by law, have to microfilm. And our microfilm isn't stored on site. It's stored in Iron Mountain in Massachusetts and in New York. And some people might say, well, what good is microfilming it? Well, think about what happened, say, in New Orleans with the floods, or even in Houston. I'm wondering, hey, if a registry got wiped out, how do you recreate the records? So at least we'd at least have microfilm. Because we have everything on computer, we do daily and weekly backups, which get sent to a renovated nuclear bunker in Rhode Island. So I want people to know we've taken steps to kind of modernize the registry, and we're the first registry to put a generator in. So a lot of these storms we've had the last number of years, we're still open for business, and we have a disaster recovery office down in the center of Dedham. So if something happened, our building was built in 1903. It's a great old building, a historic building. We like being there. But if something happens, it is a building from 1903. We will at least have an office we can go to. It'd be a struggle, but at least we could open up and keep the closings going, because I would imagine if someone's trying to close on a house, they're not going to be very happy that the registry is closed because of some type of calamity. So we've tried to, again, take kind of that private sector thinking, business type thinking, and apply it to an arm of government. So that's the modernization part. You asked about notable land records. That kind of, it's always my hobby, like the historical part of the registry. I mean, from John Adams and John Quincy Adams in Quincy, John F. Kennedy's birthplaces in Brookline. And the fourth president that sometimes people don't get that was born here in Norfolk County was George Herbert Walker Bush, born in Milton.
That's where I'm from.
Oh, okay.
I live right up from the house where he was born.
And Paul Revere, and the connections he had in Canton. So what we're doing with the notable land records, it's just been a hobby. I mean, I got to stay focused on the modernization part. But what we're trying to do is go through the records and see if there's a connection to someone who's not just a historical figure like a president, but for instance, Howard Johnson, famed businessman in Quincy. Mary Pratt, if anyone watched Tom Hanks in that movie, A League of Their Own, she was the professional, I'm dating myself, the professional softball player.
I know the name of the movie, I haven't seen it.
So what we're trying to do is in the Supreme Court Justice Brandeis lived in Dedham. We're trying to match up kind of people, whether it's a cultural fit, Hal Holbrook is an old-time actor, or Lee Remick. They were born in Norfolk County. So we're trying to do a little on the history and try to match it to the deed if we can. So that's kind of a notable land records. We're looking at historical people, political people, cultural people.
So I also understand that you recently testified on Beacon Hill about how consumers sorry, one more time, sorry. I just got to phrase it correctly in my head.
You're doing fine, you're doing fine.
Consumers with regards to who holds their mortgage, okay. So I recently heard about you going on to Beacon Hill and testifying about consumers and how that goes in regards to who can see their mortgage and who can access their mortgage. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. A bill's been filed. The Mass Registers of Deeds Association. This is now the third legislative session. Each session is 2 years. So I might have got an award for getting something through. In this case, we're not quite there on this bill. But it is a piece of legislation I feel should be the law in Massachusetts. It would require that if your mortgage gets assigned, then there should be an assignment recorded. And that's a requirement on the land court side of the registry, which again I mentioned was 20% of Norfolk County. Well, why isn't it the law on the other 80%? And to me, some of the bigger lending institutions, I'm talking national institutions, are against it. Again, the community banks, they're recording their assignments. So I always, like I said, I'm a big believer in the community banks. And there's been opposition to it, but to me, with the era of transparency, this is a bill that kind of makes the whole process transparent. In other words, if my mortgage gets assigned, I could just go online and look it up, Now, some people know who they're paying their mortgage to, but sometimes that's not the entity that actually holds their mortgage. So to me, it's just, I think, as was said at the testimony up in the Judiciary Committee, one of the other registrars said, hey, they're taking the $175 from the consumer to record the mortgage. You would think that the consumer should know who's holding their mortgage. Yeah, exactly. So we've just seen, and I mentioned the discharge problem, especially with these bigger national lenders. I think people have a tough time getting discharges out of them. But I think it's even tougher for some of the consumers to know who held the mortgage, And so to me, the biggest investment people make are their homes, but the biggest liability or the biggest borrowing they probably had is on the mortgage, so you should let the consumers know who's holding it. And so what the law requires, only on the residential mortgage side, is if that mortgage gets transferred to someone, then an assignment gets recorded. And again, the smaller banks do it. Why shouldn't the bigger lending institutions? And there's opposition, but we'll see. We'll see. The Judiciary Committee. We have two bills. We've had a lot of great sponsors here in Norfolk County. We have over 67 sponsors between state reps and state senators. It's Senate Bill 880 and House Bill 790. They're both identical in language, and hopefully it can get passed. It hasn't got passed the last two sessions, but maybe this is the third session, maybe the third time's the charm, but who knows?
I got my fingers crossed for you. Finally, before we close for today, I was wondering, we talked a little bit about the open houses that you guys have with town halls and city halls, but are there any other big initiatives that the registry does for community outreach?
Well, you mentioned, a big part of community outreach to me is getting out there, and you're right. We use the computers to get out to the town halls. We get invited to the libraries. A lot of the libraries now are starting to do community outreach and have a speaker, and we've done that to a lot of groups, whether veterans groups. Sometimes the VFW, the American Legion, they want someone to come in and talk, and we bring the computers in, and we've done that for Rotaries and Lions, and so. In business groups, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Councils on Aging. So we go out and we just try to help people out. But we also are big believers in community service. For instance, we're now getting into the holiday season. We always do a holiday food drive, where we try to get the food pantries, get some food for the food pantries. And if you can't get by the Registry of Deeds to drop the food off, on our website, again being an information-based tool, we have a list of every food pantry in Norfolk County. So they need food all year. And again, because we are centrally located, we're very busy because it's all the courts are nearby, the jurors and the law library. We do a Suits for Success program. So a lot of people clean out their items, and it's not just suits. We call it Suits for Success, but there's a group that we give it to out in Quincy, the Interfaith Social Services. It's a group that was the first group to try to get clothes and things for women. So sometimes our plan room looks like we put it down in the basement. It looks like the Filene's basement. But what we do is we take it to Father Bill's in Mainspring, which they deal with working poor and homeless people to try to get them some clothes. We recently partnered with the VA in Jamaica Plain that has taken some of these items. So again, that's just something to be aware of. It's on our website, but if you need to clean out some pocketbooks, scarves, belts, whatever, we take them. We've partnered up for years with the United States Marine Corps Reserves and the Toys for Tots program, which is great, and the holidays are upon us. And we just recently, there is a group that does wonderful work here in Norfolk County and beyond. It's called New Life Home Refurnishings. They have a warehouse in Medfield. They're centered in Medfield, but they have a warehouse in Walpole where they collect items, and we collect some on their behalf. For instance, we collect comforters, towels, cookware, pots, pans, knives, and things like that. What they do, they are a referral-based organization where over 100 agencies, including agencies and churches, refer people to this group. They might not have a bed. These people have mattresses. They have now. We don't. The bigger items, we tell them to go directly to New Life Home Refurnishings. And we thought it was good because it kind of ties into the real estate. And, you know, there are people who either own homes or rent homes that sometimes things we take for granted they don't have. So we do a fair amount of collecting in that regard at the registry, again, using the fact that we're kind of a regionally based organization and we can kind of get out there and shows like yours, Connor, that kind of spread the word. So people can either donate some of the items that we take directly to us and we'll get them down to Elm Street, Walpole, or you can go to the New Life Home Refurnishings and get the contact information and take the bigger items. They collect bureaus, they collect beds, they collect mattresses. And when you go there, it's like the old Building 19. The volunteers there fixing everything up so that people who are in need can get some help.
And especially around the holiday season, I'm sure it's going to get pretty busy for you guys. That's an incredible program.
Yeah. Well, that program, it's funny. That program, you know, we run all these programs, not the Toys for Tots or the food drive. We run the Suits for Success and New Life Home Furnishings all year. And as I said, even though we're not collecting the food, go on our website because the food pantries need help all year. Just go directly to the food pantries and donate directly.
Absolutely. Well, before we close out today, I just wanted to give you an opportunity. I mean, we tried to talk about a lot of different things, and I'm sure we hit a lot of different things, but is there anything that we didn't talk about today that you want citizens to know? Any new projects that are coming up, any new initiatives that are happening, any new things that are going on or that they should be aware of that maybe they don't know?
Yeah, well, I know we touched about a lot of the things. Yeah. Getting back to the real estate end of it, we're just finishing up a project. We had the old indexes scanned and online, but now not only do we have everything online that you can view, but it's all indexed. We just completed that project. So if you ran Connor Lynch or Bill O'Donnell, every Bill O'Donnell back to 1793 would come together. So you know, we're still focusing on the real estate end, but you know, we're just trying to be relevant as far as the outreach. And one of the biggest thing to do too, one thing. Homestead, what I would say about that has really nothing to do with the operation, but we see it. It's a creature of the state legislature under Chapter 188. Anyone that has a home can declare an estate a homestead. The legislature allows you to do that on your principal residence. And my training as an attorney, I know sometimes attorneys give you 10 different opinions on things, but I'd say 9.9 out of 10 would say if you own a home as your principal residence, you should consider putting a homestead on. It's a relatively short document that needs to be filled out, and what you're saying is by declaring it, you're putting a picket fence around your home so that there can't be a forced sale of your home. So it's well worth looking at. So I think I would just let the consumers know that it has really, it's something that needs to be done, should be done by the consumer. And there's been a lot of changes recently by the state legislature to expand the homestead to people that have it in trust. If you have a homestead recorded, the proceeds from your sale are protected for a limited period of time, up to a year. If your house burned down and you got a casualty insurance check, if you have a homestead recorded, your creditors can't come in and swoop in after that money again for a limited period of time of 2 years. So there's been a lot of changes in the homestead law, but it's worth having. Hopefully you never need it, and people say, well, why do I need it? And the best example I give you, all of us probably drive a car, and you might think you have a lot of insurance on your car, $100,000, but you hurt somebody, it's a $400,000 case against you. The advocate for that injured party is going to look for compensation. Well, your insurance company might write that 100. Where are they going to get the other 300? They're going to look to your assets. So at least the homestead protects your biggest asset. Yeah, it protects your biggest asset, your home. So I'd probably, just make sure. I wouldn't feel right if I didn't let the consumers know about that.
No, absolutely. That's why we want to do this. That way they can hear what you want to say.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to appreciate you coming on the show today. It was really awesome to talk to you and kind of get a feel about what the registry is and how it can help out everybody.
Great. Well, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Excellent.